Thursday night football has come marching into MEAC country. Tonight, it's the Rattlers of Florida A&M.
It's Thursday, September 10th, 2009. Winston-Salem State University is buzzing as it prepares to take on Florida A&M in Bowman Gray Stadium. It's a primetime game on ESPNU, making it the only college football game on for the night. Just 5 years after deciding to make the move to Division I, WSSU was finally getting the spotlight that it craved. It was also a big day for the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. It had just approved North Carolina Central, another former CIAA school, as a provisional member in the conference. NCCU was a founding member of the MEAC in 1970, but had bounced back and forth between the two conferences. But the Durham school was ready to join what would have been a three-headed North Carolina HBCU MEAC monster with WSSU and North Carolina A&T. MEAC Commissioner Dennis Thomas joined Jay Walker and Charlie Neal in the booth to trumpet that move and to talk about plans for a potential 12-team football conference in the MEAC championship game.
7-3 our score here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, this MEAC matchup, and we're joined right here in the booth by the commissioner of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, Dr. Dennis Thomas.
Well, do you ever get any complaints? I mean, you've got Hampton, you've got Norfolk State, you've got Central. Are you just raiding the old CIAA and making it a MEAC conference?
No, don't put it in that context.
That dream didn't last long, however, as the next day a move was announced that would change history for Winston-Salem State, the MEAC, and HBCU sports. This is the story of WSSU's run at Division I. July 2004 was a big month for WSSU athletics. The HBCU was best known for Basketball Hall of Famers Big House Gaines and Earl the Pearl Monroe, who led the school to the 1967 College Division Championship. In recent years, the school had become a championship football program as well that had produced multiple NFL players despite its Division II status. Under the leadership of Chancellor Dr. Harold L. Martin and with the approval of Board of Trustees, WSSU decided it wanted to move up to Division I athletics. Martin was a Winston-Salem native who had attended North Carolina A&T down the road in Greensboro. He'd worked there before returning to work at his hometown HBCU. Now, 4 years into his tenure with the school seeing rapid growth, he set his eyes on his new school competing at the same level as his beloved Aggies. Moving up to NCAA Division I advances our university's strategic plan and will offer our talented student athletes even more challenging competition, Martin said. Specifically, competing on a bigger stage will elevate the awareness of WSSU and our reputation for excellence regionally and nationally, while creating opportunities to generate even more revenue from our athletic programs. Martin was a smooth, political type who also had the ability to connect with both students and alumni, as well as board members. His athletic director, Dr. Chico Caldwell, was a proponent of the news as well and had been laying the groundwork for the move. But there were many people who didn't think Division I was the right move for the university. Most prominent among them, Big House Gaines. Gaines had been retired for over a decade, but he had spent decades as the school's director of athletics as well as its basketball coach. He wasn't convinced that the school could financially make the jump up. "I'm from Kentucky, where we breed horses, and you don't send a jackass to the Kentucky Derby," he told the Winston-Salem Journal. "This is a 5-year plan, and that means you have 5 years to get ready. It's a step in the right direction, but the only thing that bothers me is the difference in money." Gaines passed away in April 2005, and WSSU's train to Division I was already well on its way. Going Division I meant WSSU would be leaving the CIAA, the nation's oldest HBCU conference, and seeking a new home. That new home would be the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, the Division I offspring of the CIAA. It only had one program in the state of North Carolina A&T, but WSSU's rival North Carolina Central was planning to make a similar move under the direction of Bill Hayes. Of course, you're going to hear that name again. Leon Carey, the CIAA's commissioner, he wasn't too high on the move either. They're not going to win a national championship. They're looking at joining a basketball conference that has won less than 50% of its games combined. And in football, they beat up on each other, but when they go outside the conference, they lose. "We're sad to see WSSU go," he said, "and we wish them the best of luck, but I'm not worried about the CIAA losing any of its luster." The MEAC eagerly welcomed WSSU into the conference as a provisional member in July 2006. It would become the 10th football program in the conference, which was seeking to grow to 12 football schools and create a championship game. Getting the big three North Carolina HBCU athletic programs to anchor it was a key part of that plan. We are elated to welcome WSSU to the MEAC family, Dennis Thomas said that July. Obviously, we think WSSU is an outstanding academic institution with an excellent athletics program. The move allowed WSSU to renew its rivalry with North Carolina A&T. The two HBCUs were located about 30 minutes away from each other, and they had played on almost a yearly basis starting in the 1940s. But the series was on hiatus since 1999 after the MEAC demanded that its teams only play one Division II school per year. It also meant going from playing exclusively in North Carolina and Virginia to playing anywhere from Delaware to Florida. Harold Martin, the architect of WSSU's move, would leave WSSU that summer for a position with the University of North Carolina system, just before the Division I vision went to action. WSSU would spend the next couple of years transitioning to Division I. Things started off pretty well in football. WSSU went 4-7 its first season, playing a full MEAC schedule in 2006, including a 42-14 win over North Carolina A&T, the first time they had beaten their rivals since 1991. Now, men's basketball was a little bit rougher, as it was used as a cash cow while football never got a chance to play any FBS opponents. It won just 4 games during the 2007 season, and it played 18 road contests and just 6 at home. The schedule consisted of top 25 programs like Georgetown and Kansas, as well as programs like Auburn and Georgia Tech, including crosstown ACC neighbor Wake Forest. The 2007 WSSU football team went 6-5, highlighted by another win over A&T and a victory over FAMU in the Circle City Classic in Indianapolis. It was also a box office success as WSSU averaged better than 13,000 fans per game, including a school record 22,000 fans when it hosted North Carolina A&T in Bowman Gray Stadium in September. The following year, the basketball squad's record improved to 12-17 under Bobby Collins, picking up 7 wins against MEAC competition. Those early years would be the high point for WSSU in Division I. In 2008, the school was sanctioned for underfunding tennis and track and field, pushing the completion of the move date to the 2010-2011 season. In addition to the transition between NCAA divisions, WSSU was also undergoing a transition of leadership. Martin's immediate successor was Dr. Michelle Howard Vitale. She served as interim chancellor for 1 year before Donald J. Reeves was selected as the university's permanent chancellor in 2007. Reeves was a Midwesterner and an HBCU outsider who happened to focus on finances. You can kind of see where this is going, right? By the time the clock struck 2009, it was clear that the school's move to Division I wasn't going too smoothly. The school had a $1.5 million deficit in athletics as it had raised under $40K the previous year after raising $50K in 2006-2007. Hold on, it gets worse. That February, Chico Caldwell was relieved of his duties as director of athletics by Reeves. Later in the month, a proposal to the UNC Board of Governors was submitted that would have kept WSSU's tuition rate flat, while WSSU's student athletic fees would have increased 31.3%, from $579 to $760. The fee increase was shot down by the Board of Governors in favor of a 4% tuition increase. But even at this point, Reeves maintained that WSSU was still on course to complete the move to Division I. But with basketball attendance averaging less than 800, minus the 8,000 that came to see WSSU play North Carolina A&T, he announced he was considering moving all games back to the CE Gaines Center on campus. "We can't continue losing money on athletics like we have in the past," he told the Winston-Salem Journal. The next month, the MEAC tournament arrived in town and WSSU was the host, though it couldn't compete in the actual tournament. For the second year in a row, it competed against North Carolina Central in a bonus game the day of the MEAC title game. And for the second year in a row, WSSU fell to its former CIAA rival. But by now, the on-court losses were secondary to the ones at the bank. Reeves addressed the National Alumni Association in May and informed them that WSSU had a revenue problem, not a spending problem. The school had lost more than $6.1 million in the attempt to move to Division I. It was spending just under $3 million per year, but an additional $3 million was needed to be raised annually to keep the move going. Otherwise, a move back to Division II and the CIAA was a possibility. The NAA reported that it had lost about half of its donors in a period of 3 years. Reeves told alumni he needed money and that he needed money fast. I'd rather see this as a Division I institution. The only reason we would ever remain in Division II is because of money. Kind of see where this is going. The football season kicked off as usual, though. WSSU held its Meet the Rams event where Chancellor Reeves encouraged the team and the community that WSSU would beat North Carolina A&T and give Harold Martin a big welcome back to his hometown. The Rams didn't win, but they had a hell of a crowd. Then we get to the WSSU FAMU game. Now, WSSU rolled out the red carpet. ESPN's Jay Walker came on the yard. He got a chance to visit the Breezeway and the plots.
We're here at Winston-Salem. Their area is called the Breezeway, where students like to enjoy themselves, relax, and do what they do. Of course, it wouldn't be a black college campus unless you had that area where all the frat boys and the
this was starting to feel really good. It was starting to feel real. You almost forgot that they were struggling.
There has been rumors and rumblings that Winston-Salem may go back to Division II.
Wow. I wouldn't be a fan of that. And if they're even thinking about it, they've got to have reasons behind that. So I never question somebody's reasons, but personally, it's like what they say: don't look over your shoulder, you don't move backwards. You kind of keep moving forward. They're going in the right direction. Just once if they're able to get into a league and a conference and supposed to be joining the MEAC conference, then you're talking about competitive every year and the rivalries established. I just don't think they should move backwards myself. I'd hate to see them go.
Here's the throw into the end zone, almost intercepted.
Touchdown.
That's caught up.
And then it came down to earth. FAMU dominated the game, winning 34-10. The next day, Reeves met with the Board of Trustees and recommended that WSSU abandon its Division I attempt and return to the CIAA. The board unanimously agreed. Currently, nearly 80% of our total revenue comes from a single source: student fees. While the university has the second highest athletic fee in the UNC system, our fee is amongst the lowest in the MEAC where we are competing. With the size of our student body, it became evident that we are always going to be at a financial disadvantage. And just like that, nearly a decade of planning and plotting saw the Rams return right back to where they started. This decision is probably the hardest one I've ever had to make, Reeves said, because I believe WSSU belongs in Division I. If there were any reasonable way to complete this transition without diverting resources from competing athletic priorities, I would have recommended that we stay the course. This was a simple decision, but it's time to move on. We need to get this behind us. It's been dragging on too long. And the sad fact is we do not have the resources to play at that level. We simply do not raise the amount of money to cover the expenses with running a program at the Division I level. Easier said than done, however. From the beginning, the decision was a divisive one. According to the Winston-Salem Journal, Reeves and an upset football player had to be separated by police upon learning of the move. WSSU had roughly 54 players on scholarship, and the D2 max is 36. The whole men's basketball team got up and walked out of the room after hearing the news, according to a report by WSSU beat writer John Dell of the Winston-Salem Journal. And those were just the revenue sports. While football and basketball were the headliners, WSSU's athletic department had ballooned to 15 sports in anticipation of the move to Division I. In just a few short years, many of those sports would be gone. The students weren't the only one who felt angered. While many alumni had preferred to stay in the CIAA initially, the feeling wasn't unanimous, and many people became suspicious as to whether or not Reeves was overselling the debt to kill the move. One person who was not upset about the failure of the move was CIAA Commissioner Leon Carey. We welcomed them back with open arms. I'm as happy as I can be. I'm glad to hear they're back in our conference, and it's going to be a big boost for our league. As for MEAC Commissioner Dennis Thomas, who had come so close to locking down the state of North Carolina and getting a MEAC title game, the news was a jolt. You're always disappointed when a member institution decides to leave your conference, but I respect their decision and wish Winston-Salem State well. WSSU's last season in the MEAC saw the bottom fall completely from its football program as it went 1-10, with its lone win coming over the school that will be taking its place in the MEAC, Savannah State. The men's basketball program finished with a respectable 12 wins, including a sweep of North Carolina A&T. The two teams have not played since. Looking back on WSSU's ill-fated move, several factors made it impossible to overcome. WSSU's home field, Bowman Gray Stadium, is owned by the city of Winston-Salem and rented out for games, limiting revenue. Its on-campus basketball facility, the CE Gain Center, fits about 25 to 2,700 people, or a little over half of its student population. And they get in without having to pay, thanks to student athletic fees. The original plan was to get funding to expand the basketball facility, but during its MEAC days, WSSU played most of its conference games off campus at the Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum, or its annex facility, both of which were also owned by the city at the time, costing WSSU money in hopes that it would make money in games against rivals like North Carolina A&T and North Carolina Central. You add in the Great Recession that gripped the nation in 2009, and it's not hard to see why revenue was so hard to generate. Shortly after the decision to move back to the CIAA, Bill Hayes was named as the school's director of athletics. He too had been in Bowman Gray Stadium on that fateful night before WSSU pulled the plug on the move. He had spent time as FAMU's AD, but was ready to get back to North Carolina, and what better place than to return to where his coaching legend began. Hayes' move coincided with one that saw Kermit Blunt, his former quarterback, reassigned after 17 seasons as the school's head coach. His replacement was another former Hayes championship-winning quarterback, Connell Maynor. Maynor was fresh off a stint as the offensive coordinator at Fayetteville State. He had been the apple of Hayes' eyes for a couple of years. He had previously advocated for him to coach at North Carolina A&T, where Maynor had followed Hayes after leading WSSU to the CIAA title as a freshman in the 1980s. But as fate would have it, the two would reunite at WSSU and go on an epic run upon WSSU's return to Division II. But that's a story for another day. More than half a decade after it occurred, WSSU's Division I attempt and retreat is still somewhat of a point of contention, or at least a big what if, among its alumni and the greater HBCU world. WSSU found success quickly upon its return to the CIAA, winning the CIAA in its second football season and winning a basketball title, along with taking a trip to the Division II National Football Championship game in its third year. The move was hailed as a success immediately for the fan base, who were eager to get back to winning and playing more regional rivals. But eventually, its football and basketball programs returned to the crowd in the CIAA. The baseball program dominated the CIAA, but folded shortly after the league did away with the sport as a whole. Many of the issues that pushed WSSU back to Division II still remain to this day. WSSU is still leasing Bowman Gray Stadium after the Good Old Boy Network shut out an attempt by Reeves to buy the stadium. And the CE Gain Center was reborn after the move back to the CIAA with standing room only crowds for local rivals, but with limited space that fails to accommodate the student body on many nights, meaning limited revenue even when the Rams are the hottest ticket in town. And fundraising remains an issue even at the Division II level. So, was WSSU's move right for WSSU? What impact did it have on the MEAC, which had been gaining members up to that point, but saw a handful of schools eventually leave the conference, including North Carolina A&T under Chancellor Harold L. Martin? Let us know what you think in the comments, and please remember to give it a like.